The moment her sister's lips touched Marcus's at her own birthday party, Elena didn't scream or throw her drink. Instead, she smiled and raised her champagne flute higher, silently toasting the performance while mentally calculating how much her sister had just cost herself. Because what Sophia didn't know was that Elena had been sharing Marcus's business partner's bed for the past 3 months, and she'd learned some very interesting things about both men during those intimate conversations. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena Martinez had always been the responsible daughter, the one who worked 2 jobs to pay for business school, while her younger sister Sophia sailed through art school on their parents' dime. At 28, Elena had built a respectable career in marketing while living in a modest apartment in downtown Portland. Sophia, at 25, lived in a converted loft that their father paid for, spending her days creating abstract paintings and her nights at gallery openings and exclusive parties. Their relationship had always been complicated, built on a foundation of their parents' obvious favoritism toward Sophia's creative spirit and natural charisma. Elena had learned early that being the stable, reliable daughter meant being invisible, while Sophia's dramatic flair and artistic temperament earned her constant attention and praise. Their mother, Carmen, would often say that Sophia had inherited the family's artistic genes, while Elena had gotten the practical ones. The implication was clear about which traits were considered more valuable. The party was being held at Elena's apartment, a surprise she'd organized for herself because no one else had bothered to plan anything. She'd invited 20 close friends, ordered catering from her favorite Italian restaurant, and even hired a bartender to make sure everyone had a good time. Marcus had seemed genuinely touched by her efforts, helping her set up earlier in the day and commenting on how thoughtful she was to create such a warm atmosphere for everyone. Marcus Rivera was everything Elena thought she wanted in a partner. Successful, charming, and ambitious, he owned a thriving consulting firm with his business partner Daniel Chen. They'd been together for 8 months, and Elena had begun to think he might be the one. He was attentive without being clingy, successful without being arrogant, and seemed genuinely interested in building a future with her. Their relationship had progressed naturally from casual dating to something more serious, and Elena had even started keeping some of his clothes at her apartment. What she hadn't expected was how quickly Marcus's attention would shift when Sophia arrived, fashionably late, wearing a stunning emerald dress that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Sophia had a gift for commanding attention the moment she entered any room, her long, dark hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her confidence radiating from every pore. Elena watched as conversations paused when Sophia walked in, as they always did, and felt the familiar sting of being overshadowed by her sister's presence. The evening had started pleasantly enough. Elena's friends were enjoying themselves, the food was delicious, and Marcus seemed relaxed and happy. He'd given her a beautiful necklace earlier, a delicate gold chain with a small diamond pendant that she'd immediately put on. Elena had felt genuinely loved and appreciated, surrounded by people who cared about her and celebrating another year of life. But as the night progressed, Elena noticed Marcus's behavior changing. His conversations with her became shorter, his attention more divided. She caught him watching Sophia as she moved through the party, charming Elena's friends with stories about her latest art exhibition and her upcoming trip to Barcelona for an artist residency. Sophia had always had this effect on men, drawing them in with her vibrant personality and the promise of excitement that seemed to follow her everywhere. The betrayal came during what should have been the highlight of the evening. Elena had just blown out the candles on her birthday cake, surrounded by friends singing and cheering, when she noticed Marcus and Sophia standing close together near the kitchen doorway. They were engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation, their heads bent toward each other in a way that suggested intimacy rather than casual party chatter. Elena excused herself from the birthday well-wishers and moved closer, curious about what could be so captivating that Marcus would abandon her during her own birthday celebration. She positioned herself behind a group of friends where she could observe without being noticed, her marketing training having taught her the value of gathering information before acting. What she saw made her blood run cold. Marcus's hand was resting on Sophia's lower back, his fingers tracing small circles against the fabric of her dress. Sophia was looking up at him with that particular smile she used when she wanted something from a man, her hand lightly touching his chest. Their body language spoke of attraction and possibility, of secrets shared and boundaries about to be crossed. Elena felt her heart hammering in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm and continue observing. She needed to see exactly what was happening before she decided how to respond. Years of being overlooked had taught her the value of patience and strategic thinking, even when her emotions were screaming for immediate action. The kiss happened as Elena watched in stunned silence. It wasn't a quick peck or an accidental brush of lips. It was deliberate and passionate, Marcus's hands tangling in Sophia's hair while she pressed herself against him. They kissed like they were alone in the room, completely oblivious to the party happening around them and the fact that Elena's friends could potentially see what was happening. Elena's first instinct was to march over and confront them both publicly, to make a scene that would expose their betrayal in front of everyone. But something held her back, a small voice in her head reminding her of a conversation she'd had just 3 nights earlier with Daniel Chen, Marcus's business partner and the man she'd been secretly seeing for the past 3 months. Her relationship with Daniel had started as a complete accident. She'd gone to Marcus's office to surprise him with lunch one afternoon and found only Daniel there, working late on a project Marcus had abandoned to play golf with potential clients. Daniel had been apologetic about Marcus's absence and had offered to call him, but Elena had been frustrated and disappointed, and Daniel's genuine concern had been exactly what she needed. They'd ended up talking for hours, sharing stories about their work, their families, and their frustrations with Marcus's increasingly self-centered behavior. Daniel had found herself drawn to Daniel's quiet intelligence, qualities that reminded her of herself. The affair happened 2 weeks later, when Elena had run into Daniel at a coffee shop near her office. He'd invited her to join him, and their conversation had been so engaging that neither of them had noticed how much time had passed. Daniel had walked her back to her office, and when he'd asked if she'd like to have dinner with him sometime, Elena had said yes without thinking about the implications.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Their first dinner had been at a small restaurant across town, far from anywhere they might encounter Marcus or mutual acquaintances. Daniel had been honest about his growing concerns regarding his business partnership with Marcus, explaining that Marcus had been making increasingly risky decisions and taking credit for Daniel's work. Elena had shared her own frustrations about feeling taken for granted in her relationship, about always being the one who had to accommodate Marcus's schedule and priorities. The physical attraction between them had been undeniable, but it was their intellectual and emotional connection that had surprised Elena the most. Daniel listened to her ideas about marketing strategies for their consulting firm, valued her insights about client relationships, and treated her as an equal partner in their conversations. With Marcus, Elena often felt like an accessory to his success story. With Daniel, she felt like a collaborator in building something meaningful. Their relationship had deepened quickly, built on stolen afternoons and late-night phone calls when Marcus was traveling or working late. Daniel's apartment became a refuge for Elena, a place where she could be herself without worrying about living up to anyone's expectations or competing for attention. Daniel appreciated her intelligence, her ambition, and her quiet strength in ways that Marcus never had. Through Daniel, Elena had learned some disturbing information about Marcus's business practices. He'd been inflating client billings, taking personal expenses through the company, and making promises to clients that Daniel had to work overtime to fulfill. Daniel had been documenting everything, preparing for what he believed was an inevitable dissolution of their partnership. He'd also mentioned that Marcus had been inappropriately friendly with several female clients, behavior that made Daniel uncomfortable and potentially put their business at risk. Now, watching Marcus kiss her sister at her own birthday party, Elena understood that Daniel's concerns had been well-founded. Marcus wasn't just a mediocre business partner, he was someone who would betray anyone when it served his interests. The man she thought she loved was revealing his true character in the most hurtful way possible. Instead of confronting the situation immediately, Elena made a calculated decision. She walked calmly to the bar, ordered another glass of champagne, and began circulating among her guests as if nothing had happened. She thanked people for coming, laughed at their jokes, and played the role of the gracious hostess while her mind raced through the implications of what she'd witnessed. Several of her friends commented on how radiant she looked, how happy she seemed on her birthday. Elena smiled and accepted their compliments while internally cataloging everything she'd observed about Marcus and Sophia's interaction. The way they'd looked at each other suggested this wasn't their first intimate moment. The ease with which they'd fallen into each other's embrace indicated a level of familiarity that had been building for some time. As the party began to wind down, Elena watched Marcus and Sophia carefully. They made an effort to avoid being seen together again, but Elena noticed the meaningful glances they exchanged across the room and the way they both seemed energized by their secret encounter. Sophia was more animated than usual, holding court with Elena's friends and regaling them with stories that seemed designed to highlight her exciting lifestyle and sophisticated tastes. Marcus, meanwhile, had returned to Elena's side but seemed distracted and slightly guilty. He complimented her on the party, thanked her for organizing such a wonderful evening, and made all the right gestures of an attentive boyfriend. But Elena could see the difference in his behavior, the way his attention kept drifting towards Sophia, the slight flush in his cheeks that suggested arousal rather than alcohol consumption. When the last guest finally left, Elena began cleaning up while Marcus helped carry dishes to the kitchen. Sophia lingered, ostensibly to help, but actually seeming reluctant to leave. She kept finding reasons to brush past Marcus, to engage him in conversation about art and travel, subjects that Elena knew bored him, but that he suddenly seemed to find fascinating. Elena excused herself to the bathroom, partly to compose herself and partly to give Marcus and Sophia an opportunity to reveal more about their connection. She stood in her bathroom, looking at herself in the mirror and marveling at how calm she appeared despite the emotional turmoil she was experiencing. Her makeup was still perfect, her dress unwrinkled, her expression serene. She looked like a woman who'd had a lovely birthday celebration, not someone whose world had just been turned upside down. When she returned to the living room, she found Marcus and Sophia standing close together again, their voices low and urgent. They sprang apart when they saw her, both trying to look casual and failing completely. Sophia immediately announced that she needed to leave, gathering her purse and making effusive thanks for the wonderful party. Marcus offered to walk her to her car, a gesture that would have seemed polite under normal circumstances, but now struck Elena as suspicious. Elena watched from her window as Marcus and Sophia stood beside Sophia's car for several minutes, clearly reluctant to end their conversation. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language suggested they were making plans, possibly exchanging contact information, definitely establishing the foundation for future meetings. When Marcus returned to the apartment, he was overly affectionate, praising Elena's hostessing skills and expressing gratitude for such a wonderful evening. He suggested they open another bottle of wine, clearly planning to spend the night, but Elena begged off, claiming exhaustion from the party preparations. Marcus seemed disappointed but didn't press the issue, gathering his jacket and promising to call her the next day. After he left, Elena sat in her cleaned apartment, still wearing her birthday dress and the necklace Marcus had given her earlier. She felt strangely detached from the evening's events, as if she'd been watching a movie rather than living through her own betrayal. The emotional pain was there, but it was overshadowed by something else, a cold, calculating anger that surprised her with its intensity. She thought about Daniel, about their conversations regarding Marcus's character flaws and questionable business practices. She thought about their stolen afternoons together, the way he made her feel valued and respected, the plans they'd begun to make about a future that didn't include Marcus in either of their lives. What had seemed like an impossible situation just hours earlier now appeared to be resolving itself in ways she couldn't have anticipated. Elena poured herself one final glass of champagne and sat on her couch, processing the evening's revelations. Marcus had shown his true colors in the most spectacular way possible, and Sophia had revealed herself to be exactly the person Elena had always suspected she was, someone who would take whatever she wanted without considering the consequences for others. But Elena wasn't the same person she'd been that morning. The quiet, responsible daughter who always put others first had been watching and learning for months. The woman who'd been building a secret relationship with Daniel while documenting Marcus's professional shortcomings was someone capable of strategic thinking and long-term planning. Elena poured herself one final glass of champagne and sat on her couch, processing the evening's revelations. Marcus had shown his true colors in the most spectacular way possible, and Sophia had revealed herself to be exactly the person Elena had always suspected she was, someone who would take whatever she wanted without considering the consequences for others. But Elena wasn't the same person she'd been that morning. The quiet, responsible daughter who always put others first had been watching and learning for months. The woman who'd been building a secret relationship with Daniel while documenting Marcus's professional shortcomings was someone capable of strategic thinking and long-term planning.
As she prepared for bed, Elena made a mental note to call Daniel the next morning. She had some interesting information to share about Marcus's character, information that would undoubtedly influence Daniel's decisions about their business partnership. She also had some personal news to share, though she suspected Daniel had been expecting this conversation for some time. The betrayal at her birthday party hadn't destroyed Elena's world. Instead, it had clarified her priorities and simplified some very complicated decisions. Marcus and Sophia thought they were beginning something new and exciting, but they had no idea what they'd actually set in motion. Elena fell asleep that night with a small smile on her face, already planning her next moves. Her sister and her ex-boyfriend were about to discover that underestimating Elena Martinez had been their first and most crucial mistake. The quiet, responsible daughter was done being invisible, and she had some very powerful allies they didn't know about. The next morning brought clarity and purpose that surprised Elena with its intensity. She woke up feeling more energetic and focused than she had in months, as if the previous evening's betrayal had burned away all the uncertainty and self-doubt that had been holding her back. She made coffee, checked her phone for the inevitable messages from Marcus and Sophia, and began planning her response strategy. Marcus had sent 3 texts overnight, each one more elaborate in its expressions of love and gratitude for the wonderful party. Reading them, Elena marveled at his ability to compartmentalize his behavior, to write loving messages to her just hours after kissing her sister. The texts revealed more about his character than he probably realized, showing someone who could maintain multiple narratives simultaneously without experiencing apparent internal conflict. Sophia's message was shorter but equally revealing. She thanked Elena for including her in the celebration and mentioned how much she'd enjoyed meeting Marcus, describing him as charming and successful. The casual way she mentioned Marcus suggested she was testing the waters, possibly trying to gauge whether Elena had noticed their interaction or would be receptive to hearing Sophia praise her boyfriend. Instead of responding immediately to either message, Elena called Daniel. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and slightly concerned. They'd planned to meet later that afternoon, but Elena's early call suggested something significant had happened. She told him everything, describing the party, the kiss, and her observations about Marcus and Sophia's behavior. Daniel listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting Elena process the situation aloud. When she finished, there was a long pause before Daniel spoke. His response surprised her with its lack of surprise. Daniel admitted that he'd been expecting something like this for months, based on Marcus's increasingly erratic behavior and his comments about Elena's family. Marcus had mentioned Sophia several times, describing her as more exciting and adventurous than Elena, comparisons that had made Daniel uncomfortable, but that now seemed clearly inappropriate. Daniel had been documenting Marcus's professional misconduct for weeks, building a case for dissolving their partnership that would protect his own interests and reputation. He'd been reluctant to move forward because he knew it would affect Elena's relationship, but Marcus's personal betrayal had eliminated that concern. They agreed to meet that afternoon to discuss their options, both professional and personal. Daniel's apartment had become their sanctuary, a place where they could speak freely about their plans and their growing feelings for each other. Elena found herself looking forward to seeing him with an intensity that surprised her, as if Marcus's betrayal had freed her to acknowledge what she'd been feeling for months. Before leaving for work, Elena crafted careful responses to both Marcus and Sophia. To Marcus, she wrote a brief thank you for his help with the party and mentioned that she was planning a quiet day to recover from the celebration. To Sophia, she expressed appreciation for her attendance and suggested they have lunch soon to catch up on family news. Both messages were designed to seem normal while buying Elena time to implement her strategy. She wanted Marcus and Sophia to feel secure in their secret, to believe they'd successfully deceived her and could continue their relationship without consequences. The longer they felt safe, the more evidence Elena could gather, and the more thoroughly she could prepare for the eventual confrontation. At work, Elena found it difficult to concentrate on routine tasks. Her mind kept returning to the previous evening, analyzing every detail and considering various response scenarios. She'd always been good at strategic thinking, a skill that had served her well in marketing campaigns and client presentations. Now she was applying those same analytical abilities to her personal situation, treating Marcus and Sophia's betrayal as a problem to be solved rather than just an emotional trauma to be endured. During her lunch break, Elena researched Marcus and Daniel's business partnership, reviewing public records and professional networking sites to understand the structure of their company and their respective contributions. She discovered that Daniel held a larger ownership stake than she'd realized, and that Marcus's public profile significantly overstated his role in their most successful projects. The more Elena learned about their professional relationship, the more she understood Daniel's frustrations and his concerns about Marcus's character. Marcus had been taking credit for Daniel's work while contributing minimal effort to their actual business operations. Their clients were primarily Daniel's relationships, their successful projects were primarily Daniel's innovations, and their company's reputation was built on Daniel's expertise. Elena also did some research on Sophia's recent activities, checking her social media profiles and gallery websites for information about her career and financial situation, which she discovered was troubling but not entirely surprising. Sophia's art career was largely subsidized by their parents. Her gallery showings were at venues that charged artists for wall space rather than paying them, and her upcoming Barcelona residency was a pay-to-participate program rather than a prestigious appointment. Despite their parents' financial support, Sophia appeared to be struggling financially, probably accumulating debt to maintain her lifestyle and artistic pursuits. Elena wondered if Marcus's apparent success and stability were part of his appeal to Sophia, if her sister saw him as a solution to her financial problems rather than just a romantic conquest. The afternoon meeting with Daniel took place at his apartment, a modern space in the Pearl District that reflected his success and sophisticated tastes. Elena had been there many times over the past 3 months, but this visit felt different, charged with possibility and the promise of significant changes ahead. Daniel had prepared extensively for their conversation, with documents spread across his dining table and a bottle of wine already open. He'd been thinking about their situation all day, developing strategies for both the business dissolution and their personal relationship. His thoroughness and consideration impressed Elena, reinforcing her growing conviction that she'd been wasting her time with Marcus when Daniel had been available all along.
They spent hours discussing their options, weighing various approaches, and considering potential consequences. Daniel's plan for dissolving the partnership was elegant in its simplicity. He would buy out Marcus's share of the business at fair market value, allowing Marcus to maintain his dignity while removing him from day-to-day operations. The documentation Daniel had compiled would ensure that Marcus couldn't contest the valuation or claim credit for work he hadn't done. For Elena, the situation was more complex. She could confront Marcus and Sophia immediately, exposing their betrayal and demanding accountability. She could wait and gather more evidence, building a stronger case for their deception and infidelity. Or she could simply walk away, ending her relationship with Marcus without explanation and allowing natural consequences to unfold. Daniel advocated for a measured approach that would protect Elena's interests while avoiding unnecessary drama. He suggested that Elena continue her relationship with Marcus temporarily, gathering evidence of his infidelity while Daniel completed the business separation. Once Daniel had secured his professional interests, Elena could confront Marcus with documentation of both his personal and professional betrayals. The strategy appealed to Elena's analytical nature, but she worried about the emotional cost of maintaining a false relationship with Marcus while knowing about his deception. Daniel reassured her that their own relationship would provide the support and affection she needed to get through the difficult period ahead. He was committed to being her partner in every sense, offering both practical assistance and emotional sustenance. As the evening progressed, their conversation shifted from strategy to feelings, from planning to dreams about their future together. Daniel confessed that he'd been falling in love with Elena for months, that his growing feelings for her had been one of the factors motivating his desire to separate from Marcus professionally. Elena admitted that her relationship with Marcus had felt increasingly hollow as her connection with Daniel had deepened. They made love that evening with a passion and tenderness that confirmed what Elena had been feeling for weeks. Being with Daniel felt like coming home to herself, like finding the person she was meant to be with rather than settling for someone who was merely acceptable. Marcus had been a placeholder, someone who filled a role in Elena's life without truly understanding or appreciating who she was. Elena spent the night at Daniel's apartment, waking up in his arms with a sense of peace and determination she hadn't felt in years. The path ahead was clear, even if it would be challenging to navigate. She would gather evidence of Marcus's betrayals, support Daniel's business strategy, and position herself for a future that honored her intelligence, ambition, and capacity for deep love. Over breakfast, they refined their timeline and established communication protocols for the weeks ahead. Elena would maintain her relationship with Marcus while documenting his behavior and supporting Daniel's partnership dissolution. They would continue meeting secretly, but with the understanding that their relationship was no longer just an affair, but a commitment to building something lasting together. Elena returned to her apartment that morning feeling like a different person than she'd been 48 hours earlier. The quiet, accommodating daughter who'd always put others' needs before her own was evolving into someone who could pursue her own happiness while strategically addressing the people who had betrayed her. Marcus called as she was getting dressed for work, his voice cheerful and apparently oblivious to any tension. He asked about her recovery from the party, mentioned how much he'd enjoyed meeting some of her friends, and suggested dinner that evening to celebrate her birthday privately. Elena accepted the invitation, recognizing it as an opportunity to observe his behavior and gather more information about his state of mind. Sophia sent a text that afternoon, suggesting coffee that weekend and mentioning again how charming she'd found Marcus. The message confirmed Elena's suspicions that Sophia was planning to pursue Marcus more aggressively, probably believing that Elena would be easily pushed aside once Marcus realized what Sophia could offer him. Elena responded positively to both invitations, setting the stage for a weekend that would reveal much about Marcus and Sophia's intentions while advancing her own strategic objectives. She was no longer the victim of their betrayal, but an active participant in determining how their story would unfold. The transformation was subtle but profound. Elena carried herself differently, spoke with more confidence, and approached her work with renewed energy and focus. Her colleagues noticed the change, commenting on her improved mood and increased assertiveness in meetings. Elena realized that her secret relationship with Daniel had been giving her strength and self-respect that had been missing from her relationship with Marcus. As the week progressed, Elena implemented her strategy with precision and patience. She documented every interaction with Marcus, noting inconsistencies in his stories and evidence of his continued contact with Sophia. She supported Daniel's business preparations, offering insights from her marketing expertise and helping him prepare presentations for potential new clients. Most importantly, Elena began to envision a future that didn't include the family dynamics and romantic compromises that had defined her life for so long. She was discovering her own power, her ability to shape circumstances rather than simply react to them. The quiet daughter was finding her voice, and Marcus and Sophia were about to discover they'd underestimated her completely. The weekend would bring new revelations and opportunities for Elena to advance her plans. She was no longer playing defense against other people's betrayals, but taking offensive action to secure her own happiness and success. The birthday party kiss that had seemed like the end of her world was actually the beginning of something much better, though Marcus and Sophia wouldn't realize it until it was far too late to change course. The coffee shop Sophia had chosen for their weekend meeting was predictably trendy, the kind of place where aspiring artists and social media influencers gathered to see and be seen. Elena arrived first, selecting a corner table with clear sightlines to the entrance and exit, positioning herself strategically as she did in business meetings. She ordered a simple latte while mentally preparing for what was sure to be a performance from her sister. Sophia swept in 20 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses despite the overcast Portland weather and carrying the vintage leather bag their grandmother had left her. She embraced Elena dramatically, her perfume overwhelming and her energy artificially heightened in the way that suggested she was nervous about something. Elena accepted the hug calmly, noting how Sophia's hands trembled slightly and how she avoided direct eye contact. Their conversation began with superficial topics, Sophia chattering about her latest painting series and her preparations for the Barcelona residency. Elena listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in her sister's artistic pursuits. She'd learned from her marketing career that the best way to gather information was to create a comfortable environment where people felt safe revealing more than they intended. As Sophia relaxed, she began steering the conversation toward Marcus, praising his sophistication and business acumen with an enthusiasm that seemed excessive for someone she'd supposedly just met. Elena encouraged these observations, agreeing that Marcus was indeed successful and charming, while carefully studying her sister's reactions and body language. The breakthrough came when Sophia mentioned that she'd been thinking about exploring business consulting for galleries and art venues, wondering if Marcus might have insights to share about working with creative industries. The suggestion was transparently manipulative, a pretext for continuing contact that Sophia presented as professional interest rather than personal attraction. Elena expressed enthusiasm for the idea, suggesting that Sophia should definitely pursue Marcus's expertise and offering to facilitate an introduction to discuss potential collaboration. Sophia's relief was palpable, her smile becoming genuine for the first time during their meeting. She clearly believed she'd successfully manipulated Elena into providing access to Marcus without arousing suspicion about her true motivations. They parted with plans for Sophia to contact Marcus directly about the consulting opportunity, with Elena's blessing and encouragement. Elena watched her sister leave, noting the spring in her step and the way she immediately pulled out her phone, probably to text Marcus about their successful conversation. The trap was being set exactly as Elena had envisioned. That evening's dinner with Marcus revealed the other side of the conspiracy. He seemed unusually attentive, bringing Elena flowers and choosing an expensive restaurant he'd never taken her to before. His guilt was manifesting as overcompensation, showering her with attention and affection that felt hollow compared to the genuine care Daniel showed her. Throughout dinner, Marcus mentioned Sophia several times, commenting on her artistic talent and sophisticated perspective in ways that seemed designed to test Elena's reactions. He was clearly trying to gauge whether Elena would be threatened by his interest in her sister or would encourage a friendship between them. Elena played her role perfectly, expressing appreciation for Sophia's qualities and suggesting that Marcus might find her artistic viewpoint valuable for his business. When Marcus mentioned that Sophia had contacted him about consulting opportunities in the art world, Elena feigned surprise and delight, praising both of them for their professional initiative and offering to help facilitate their collaboration however she could. Marcus's satisfaction was obvious, his relief evident as he realized Elena was actually supporting his connection with Sophia rather than feeling threatened by it. Over the following weeks, Elena implemented her strategy with methodical precision. She maintained her regular schedule with Marcus while secretly meeting Daniel to coordinate their business and personal plans. The dual relationship required careful time management and emotional compartmentalization, but Elena discovered she had more capacity for strategic thinking than she'd realized. Daniel's partnership dissolution was proceeding smoothly, with Marcus apparently unaware of the legal and financial preparations being made. Daniel had engaged a business attorney who specialized in partnership disputes, ensuring that every document and transaction would be legally sound and resistant to challenge. The attorney had been impressed by the thoroughness of Daniel's documentation, commenting that Marcus would have no grounds for contesting the separation terms. Meanwhile, Elena was gathering evidence of Marcus's infidelity with clinical efficiency. She'd installed tracking software on the laptop Marcus sometimes used at her apartment, monitored his social media activity, and documented his schedule discrepancies with photographs and timestamps. The picture emerging was of someone who'd been planning his betrayal for months, not someone who'd been swept away by sudden passion. Marcus and Sophia's relationship was developing exactly as Elena had predicted. They met frequently under the guise of discussing business collaboration, their meetings extending well beyond professional necessity, and often ending at restaurants or bars that suggested personal rather than commercial interest. Elena encouraged these meetings, expressing enthusiasm for their partnership and offering her own marketing expertise to support their ventures. The irony wasn't lost on Elena that she was facilitating her boyfriend's affair with her sister while conducting her own affair with his business partner. The situation had a complexity that appealed to her analytical mind, like managing multiple marketing campaigns simultaneously while ensuring each one achieved its objectives without interfering with the others. Sophia began confiding in Elena about her growing attraction to Marcus, describing their meetings with barely concealed excitement and asking for advice about navigating professional relationships with attractive men. Elena offered supportive counsel, encouraging Sophia to follow her instincts while subtly suggesting strategies that would make their affair more obvious and therefore easier to document. The family dynamics began shifting as their parents noticed Sophia's improved mood and increased references to business opportunities. Carmen and Roberto Martinez had always worried about Sophia's financial stability, despite their continued support of her artistic career. Marcus's apparent interest in helping Sophia develop commercial applications for her creativity was welcomed as evidence that their younger daughter was finally maturing professionally. Elena endured several family dinners where Marcus was praised for his mentorship of Sophia, his business acumen being held up as exactly what Sophia needed to succeed commercially. Elena agreed enthusiastically with these assessments, suggesting that Marcus's guidance might be exactly what would help Sophia achieve the success she deserved. During these dinners, Elena observed Marcus and Sophia's interaction with the detachment of a researcher studying animal behavior. They were becoming increasingly bold in their mutual attraction, sharing private jokes and maintaining eye contact longer than appropriate. Their parents either didn't notice or chose not to acknowledge what was becoming obvious to anyone who understood the situation. Daniel provided emotional support and strategic guidance throughout this difficult period, helping Elena process her feelings while maintaining focus on their long-term objectives. Their relationship deepened as they navigated the complex situation together, their bond strengthened by the shared challenge and their mutual commitment to emerging from the situation with their integrity intact. They began making concrete plans for their future, discussing living arrangements, career coordination, and the timeline for making their relationship public. Daniel's business separation from Marcus was scheduled to be complete within 6 weeks, after which they could reveal their partnership without professional complications affecting their personal lives. Elena's work performance actually improved during this period, her strategic thinking skills sharpened by the complex personal situation she was managing. Her supervisor noticed her increased confidence and analytical abilities, offering her leadership opportunities on high-profile projects that would advance her career significantly. Elena accepted these challenges eagerly, recognizing that professional success would provide additional security and independence regardless of how her personal situation resolved. The first crack in Marcus and Sophia's facade appeared during a gallery opening Sophia had insisted Elena attend. The event was for a group show featuring emerging artists, the kind of pretentious affair Elena usually avoided, but agreed to attend as part of maintaining her supportive sister role. Marcus met them there, ostensibly to learn more about the art world, but actually to spend time with Sophia in Elena's presence. Throughout the evening, Marcus and Sophia's behavior became increasingly inappropriate, their attraction manifesting in lingering touches and private conversations that excluded Elena despite her presence. Elena documented their interaction with discretion, using her phone to capture photographs and brief videos that clearly showed their intimate body language and obvious mutual fascination. The climax of the evening came when Elena excused herself to find the restroom, leaving Marcus and Sophia alone near a sculpture that provided partial concealment from other gallery visitors. Elena positioned herself where she could observe them through a mirrored surface, watching as Marcus pulled Sophia into an alcove and kissed her passionately while other patrons moved through the gallery just feet away. The kiss lasted longer than their first encounter at Elena's birthday party, their hands exploring each other's bodies with desperate hunger that suggested their relationship had already progressed beyond innocent attraction. Elena captured several photographs of their embrace, the images clearly showing their faces and the gallery setting that would provide context and timestamps for future reference.
When Elena returned, Marcus and Sophia had composed themselves but were obviously flushed and energized by their encounter. They made excuses to leave separately, Marcus claiming an early morning meeting and Sophia mentioning plans with other artists. Elena agreed to their departures with understanding sympathy, offering to get herself home safely and encouraging them both to pursue their respective obligations. The drive home provided Elena with time to process what she'd witnessed and photographed. The evidence was becoming overwhelming, not just of Marcus's infidelity, but of both Marcus and Sophia's willingness to betray Elena in increasingly bold and hurtful ways. They were so confident in their deception that they were taking risks that would have exposed them to anyone who was actually paying attention.
Elena's phone contained dozens of photographs and several short videos documenting Marcus and Sophia's relationship over the past month. The evidence showed clear progression from professional interest to personal attraction to physical intimacy, with timestamps and location data that would be impossible to dispute or explain away innocently. That night, Elena met Daniel at his apartment to review the evidence and discuss their next steps. Daniel's reaction to the photographs was a mixture of disgust at Marcus's behavior and admiration for Elena's strategic documentation. He agreed that they had more than enough evidence to proceed with both the business separation and Elena's personal confrontation with Marcus and Sophia. Daniel's business attorney had completed the partnership dissolution paperwork with documents ready for Marcus's signature that would transfer his ownership stake to Daniel at fair market value, while releasing him from ongoing obligations and liabilities. The terms were generous enough that Marcus would have difficulty refusing them, especially given his precarious financial situation and the evidence of professional misconduct Daniel had compiled. Elena's situation was more complex because she needed to decide whether to confront Marcus and Sophia privately or expose their betrayal publicly. Daniel advocated for a private confrontation that would allow Elena to maintain her dignity while making clear that their deception had been discovered and documented. Public exposure might provide emotional satisfaction, but could also create complications for Elena's family relationships and professional reputation. They agreed on a strategy that would maximize Elena's leverage while minimizing potential negative consequences for her own life and career. Elena would confront Marcus privately, presenting evidence of his infidelity and his business misconduct simultaneously. The dual revelation would leave him unable to mount an effective defense or counterattack, since both his personal and professional integrity had been compromised. Sophia would be confronted separately, with Elena using their family relationship to address the betrayal personally rather than professionally. Elena's goal wasn't to destroy Sophia, but to establish clear boundaries and consequences for her behavior, ensuring that future interactions would be based on honest acknowledgement of what had occurred rather than continued deception. The timeline was set for the following week, allowing Daniel to complete his business preparations while Elena gathered final evidence and prepared her presentation of the facts. They would coordinate their confrontations to occur simultaneously, preventing Marcus from warning Sophia or attempting to manipulate either situation individually. Elena spent the weekend in careful preparation, organizing her evidence chronologically and developing talking points for both confrontations. She felt surprisingly calm about the approaching conversations, her anger having crystallized into determination and her hurt having transformed into strategic purpose. The quiet daughter who'd always avoided conflict was discovering her capacity for direct action when her core interests were threatened. Sunday evening brought a text from Marcus suggesting dinner Monday night, apparently oblivious to the fact that Elena had been documenting his deception for weeks. Elena confirmed the dinner plans, recognizing the perfect opportunity to present her evidence in a private setting where Marcus couldn't create a public scene or attempt to deflect responsibility. Sophia also contacted Elena, suggesting they meet for lunch Tuesday to discuss her progress with the art consulting project she'd been developing with Marcus's guidance. Elena agreed to this meeting as well, planning to address Sophia's betrayal immediately after resolving the situation with Marcus. The stage was set for confrontations that would end Elena's relationships with both Marcus and Sophia while clearing the path for her future with Daniel. Elena had evolved from victim to strategist, using the patience and analytical skills that had always been her strengths to turn the tables on those who had betrayed her trust. Monday morning brought final preparations as Daniel completed his business arrangements and Elena reviewed her documentation one last time. The evidence was comprehensive and indisputable, the strategy was sound, and their coordination was perfect. Marcus and Sophia had no idea that their secret relationship was about to explode in ways that would have lasting consequences for all of their lives. Elena arrived at work that morning feeling more confident and purposeful than she had in months. The confrontation ahead wasn't something to be dreaded, but an opportunity to reclaim her power and establish the foundation for a future built on honesty and mutual respect. The birthday party kiss that had started this chain of events was about to reach its inevitable conclusion, with Elena finally taking control of her own story. The morning passed quickly as Elena finalized her preparations and coordinated with Daniel's schedule. Their plan was precise and comprehensive, accounting for various possible reactions and ensuring that Elena would emerge from the situation with her dignity intact and her future secure. The quiet daughter was about to become a force to be reckoned with, and Marcus and Sophia were completely unprepared for what was coming their way. Daniel called during Elena's lunch break to confirm that his business attorney had delivered the partnership dissolution documents to Marcus's office, along with a request for a meeting to discuss the terms and timeline. Marcus had apparently been shocked by the proposal, claiming he had no idea Daniel was unhappy with their partnership and requesting time to review the paperwork with his own attorney. The timing was perfect for Elena's evening confrontation, as Marcus would be dealing with professional uncertainty while she presented evidence of his personal betrayal. The dual crisis would prevent him from focusing effectively on either situation, giving Elena maximum leverage and minimizing his ability to mount a coherent defense or counterattack. Elena's afternoon was devoted to final preparations, including printing copies of the most damaging photographs and creating a timeline document that showed the progression of Marcus and Sophia's relationship from their first meeting at her birthday party through their most recent gallery encounter. The evidence was organized professionally, like a marketing presentation, designed to communicate complex information clearly and persuasively. As evening approached, Elena felt the calm focus that had served her well in high-pressure business situations. The confrontation ahead wasn't about emotional catharsis, but about establishing facts, setting boundaries, and transitioning to the next phase of her life. Marcus and Sophia had betrayed her trust, but they'd also freed her from relationships that hadn't been serving her authentic interests or supporting her genuine happiness. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was upscale and intimate, the kind of place where he probably expected to smooth over any concerns Elena might have about his recent distraction and inattentiveness. He had no idea that Elena's concerns went far beyond his emotional availability and extended to documented evidence of infidelity, professional misconduct, and systematic deception. Elena arrived precisely on time, carrying a leather portfolio that contained her evidence and talking points. She looked professional and composed, dressed in a navy blazer that projected competence and authority rather than romantic interest. Marcus would soon discover that he was facing a business adversary rather than a heartbroken girlfriend, and the difference would determine how completely his world was about to change. The confrontation was about to begin, and Elena was ready to reclaim her power with the precision and determination that had been building for months. The strategic phase of her response was complete, and the execution was about to reveal just how thoroughly Marcus and Sophia had underestimated the quiet daughter who'd been watching and planning while they'd been playing their games of betrayal and deception. Monday morning brought final preparations as Daniel completed his business arrangements and Elena reviewed her documentation one last time. The evidence was comprehensive and indisputable, the strategy was sound, and their coordination was perfect. Marcus and Sophia had no idea that their secret relationship was about to explode in ways that would have lasting consequences for all of their lives. Elena arrived at work that morning feeling more confident and purposeful than she had in months. The confrontation ahead wasn't something to be dreaded, but an opportunity to reclaim her power and establish the foundation for a future built on honesty and mutual respect. The birthday party kiss that had started this chain of events was about to reach its inevitable conclusion, with Elena finally taking control of her own story. The morning passed quickly as Elena finalized her preparations and coordinated with Daniel's schedule. Their plan was precise and comprehensive, accounting for various possible reactions and ensuring that Elena would emerge from the situation with her dignity intact and her future secure. The quiet daughter was about to become a force to be reckoned with, and Marcus and Sophia were completely unprepared for what was coming their way. Daniel called during Elena's lunch break to confirm that his business attorney had delivered the partnership dissolution documents to Marcus's office, along with a request for a meeting to discuss the terms and timeline. Marcus had apparently been shocked by the proposal, claiming he had no idea Daniel was unhappy with their partnership and requesting time to review the paperwork with his own attorney. The timing was perfect for Elena's evening confrontation, as Marcus would be dealing with professional uncertainty while she presented evidence of his personal betrayal. The dual crisis would prevent him from focusing effectively on either situation, giving Elena maximum leverage and minimizing his ability to mount a coherent defense or counterattack. Elena's afternoon was devoted to final preparations, including printing copies of the most damaging photographs and creating a timeline document that showed the progression of Marcus and Sophia's relationship from their first meeting at her birthday party through their most recent gallery encounter. The evidence was organized professionally, like a marketing presentation, designed to communicate complex information clearly and persuasively. As evening approached, Elena felt the calm focus that had served her well in high-pressure business situations. The confrontation ahead wasn't about emotional catharsis, but about establishing facts, setting boundaries, and transitioning to the next phase of her life. Marcus and Sophia had betrayed her trust, but they'd also freed her from relationships that hadn't been serving her authentic interests. Marcus arrived at the restaurant looking haggard, his usual polished appearance marred by stress lines and rumpled clothing. The partnership dissolution documents Daniel had delivered that afternoon had clearly rattled him more than he'd expected. Elena observed his agitation with clinical detachment, recognizing the signs of someone whose carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble. He kissed her cheek perfunctorily, his distraction obvious as he fumbled with his phone and kept glancing toward the restaurant entrance as if expecting unwelcome visitors. Elena allowed him to order wine and make small talk about work challenges, waiting for the right moment to present her evidence while studying his increasingly nervous behavior. The opening came when Marcus mentioned his partnership troubles, describing Daniel's dissolution request as sudden and unreasonable. He complained that Daniel had accused him of professional misconduct without providing specific examples, suggesting that his business partner was experiencing some kind of breakdown or jealousy over Marcus's client relationships. Elena listened sympathetically, making appropriate supportive sounds while internally marveling at Marcus's ability to reframe Daniel's legitimate concerns as personal weakness. The psychological manipulation was so automatic that Marcus probably believed his own version of events, having convinced himself that he was the victim rather than the cause of their professional problems. When Marcus finished his litany of complaints about Daniel's unreasonable behavior, Elena opened her leather portfolio and placed the first photograph on the table between them. The image showed Marcus and Sophia kissing at the gallery opening, their faces clearly visible and their passionate embrace unmistakably intimate. Marcus's wine glass stopped halfway to his lips, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and panic in rapid succession. He stared at the photograph as if it might change or disappear, his mouth opening and closing without producing sound. Elena watched his reaction calmly, noting how quickly his complexion shifted from flushed to pale. She placed a second photograph on the table, this one showing Marcus and Sophia leaving a restaurant together the previous week, their body language clearly romantic rather than professional. Then a third, capturing them in an intimate conversation at a coffee shop, their heads bent together in obvious conspiracy. Marcus finally found his voice, stammering explanations about business meetings and professional consultations, but his protests sounded hollow even to himself. Elena continued placing photographs methodically, creating a visual timeline of his deception that made denials impossible and excuses irrelevant. The final image was from Elena's birthday party, showing Marcus and Sophia's first kiss with timestamp data proving when the betrayal had begun. Elena had enhanced the photo to show their faces clearly, eliminating any possibility of misidentification or innocent explanation. Marcus slumped in his chair, his carefully maintained facade cracking completely as he realized the scope of Elena's documentation. He began apologizing frantically, claiming the relationship with Sophia meant nothing and begging Elena to forgive what he characterized as a momentary lapse in judgment. Elena let him exhaust himself with explanations and excuses before speaking, her voice steady and professional as she addressed his attempts at damage control. She informed him that she'd been aware of his relationship with Sophia for weeks, that she'd documented their meetings extensively, and that she'd used their deception to gather evidence of his character that extended well beyond personal infidelity. Producing a second set of documents, Elena presented evidence of Marcus's professional misconduct that Daniel had shared with her. Bank statements showing inflated billing, client complaints about services not delivered, expense reports documenting personal purchases charged to business accounts. The financial irregularities painted a picture of systematic fraud that complemented the personal betrayal documented in the photographs. Marcus's panic intensified as he realized Elena possessed evidence that could destroy both his personal relationships and his professional reputation. He alternated between angry denials and desperate bargaining, threatening legal action one moment and promising to end his relationship with Sophia the next. Elena remained unmoved by his emotional display, explaining that his threats carried no weight since her evidence was comprehensive and legally obtained. His promises were meaningless because his character had been thoroughly exposed through months of careful observation and documentation. The restaurant setting provided perfect containment for Marcus's breakdown, preventing him from creating a public scene while ensuring their conversation remained private. Other diners glanced occasionally at their table, probably assuming they were discussing business or relationship problems, unaware they were witnessing the systematic destruction of someone's carefully constructed lies. Elena's presentation concluded with a clear statement of consequences and expectations. Marcus would sign Daniel's partnership dissolution documents without contest, accepting the fair market valuation and relinquishing all claims to their shared business assets. He would also end his relationship with Sophia immediately and permanently, removing himself from Elena's family dynamics entirely. In return, Elena would keep the evidence of his professional misconduct confidential, allowing him to preserve his reputation and seek employment elsewhere without the burden of fraud allegations. Producing a second set of documents, Elena presented evidence of Marcus's professional misconduct that Daniel had shared with her. Bank statements showing inflated billing, client complaints about services not delivered, expense reports documenting personal purchases charged to business accounts. The financial irregularities painted a picture of systematic fraud that complemented the personal betrayal documented in the photographs. Marcus's panic intensified as he realized Elena possessed evidence that could destroy both his personal relationships and his professional reputation. He alternated between angry denials and desperate bargaining, threatening legal action one moment and promising to end his relationship with Sophia the next. Elena remained unmoved by his emotional display, explaining that his threats carried no weight since her evidence was comprehensive and legally obtained. His promises were meaningless because his character had been thoroughly exposed through months of careful observation and documentation. The restaurant setting provided perfect containment for Marcus's breakdown, preventing him from creating a public scene while ensuring their conversation remained private. Other diners glanced occasionally at their table, probably assuming they were discussing business or relationship problems, unaware they were witnessing the systematic destruction of someone's carefully constructed lies. Elena's presentation concluded with a clear statement of consequences and expectations. Marcus would sign Daniel's partnership dissolution documents without contest, accepting the fair market valuation and relinquishing all claims to their shared business assets. He would also end his relationship with Sophia immediately and permanently, removing himself from Elena's family dynamics entirely. In return, Elena would keep the evidence of his professional misconduct confidential, allowing him to preserve his reputation and seek employment elsewhere without the burden of fraud allegations. Producing a second set of documents, Elena presented evidence of Marcus's professional misconduct that Daniel had shared with her. Bank statements showing inflated billing, client complaints about services not delivered, expense reports documenting personal purchases charged to business accounts. The financial irregularities painted a picture of systematic fraud that complemented the personal betrayal documented in the photographs. Marcus's panic intensified as he realized Elena possessed evidence that could destroy both his personal relationships and his professional reputation. He alternated between angry denials and desperate bargaining, threatening legal action one moment and promising to end his relationship with Sophia the next. Elena remained unmoved by his emotional display, explaining that his threats carried no weight since her evidence was comprehensive and legally obtained. His promises were meaningless because his character had been thoroughly exposed through months of careful observation and documentation. The restaurant setting provided perfect containment for Marcus's breakdown, preventing him from creating a public scene while ensuring their conversation remained private. Other diners glanced occasionally at their table, probably assuming they were discussing business or relationship problems, unaware they were witnessing the systematic destruction of someone's carefully constructed lies. Elena's presentation concluded with a clear statement of consequences and expectations. Marcus would sign Daniel's partnership dissolution documents without contest, accepting the fair market valuation and relinquishing all claims to their shared business assets. He would also end his relationship with Sophia immediately and permanently, removing himself from Elena's family dynamics entirely. In return, Elena would keep the evidence of his professional misconduct confidential, allowing him to preserve his reputation and seek employment elsewhere without the burden of fraud allegations. She would also refrain from sharing details of his personal betrayal with their mutual friends, protecting his social relationships from the consequences of his deception. The terms were generous, considering the scope of Marcus's betrayal, but Elena made clear they were non-negotiable and time-sensitive. Marcus had 24 hours to sign the business documents and 48 hours to end his relationship with Sophia, after which Elena would consider their agreement void and act accordingly. Marcus left the restaurant in obvious distress, his hands shaking as he gathered the photographs Elena allowed him to keep as reminders of her evidence collection. He made several attempts to negotiate the terms or timeline, but Elena's refusal was absolute and final. The confrontation had proceeded exactly as she'd planned, leaving Marcus with limited options and clear consequences for his choices. Elena finished her meal alone, savoring both the food and the satisfaction of finally addressing months of deception and manipulation. Her phone buzzed with frantic texts from Marcus, alternating between apologies and accusations, but she ignored them all. The conversation was complete, and his response would determine whether their resolution remained private or become public knowledge. The drive home provided time for Elena to process what she'd accomplished and prepare for the next phase of her strategy. Marcus's confrontation had been successful beyond her expectations, his complete breakdown confirming that her evidence was overwhelming and her leverage absolute. Sophia's confrontation would require different tactics, but should prove equally effective. Daniel was waiting at Elena's apartment when she arrived, having used his key to prepare dinner and open wine for their debriefing session. His partnership meeting with Marcus had been brief and decisive, with Marcus signing the dissolution documents without reading them thoroughly and expressing eagerness to separate their business interests.
The messages revealed Marcus's true character more clearly than months of careful observation had accomplished, showing someone who viewed himself as perpetually victimized by circumstances beyond his control, rather than someone whose choices had natural consequences. Elena felt validated in her decision to end their relationship and grateful that she'd discovered his true nature before making deeper commitments. Tuesday morning brought Elena's final confrontation as she met Sophia for lunch at the trendy cafe where their previous conversation had taken place. Sophia arrived in obvious distress, her usual dramatic flair replaced by genuine anxiety and confusion about Marcus's sudden change in behavior. Elena listened patiently as Sophia described Marcus's frantic phone calls and text messages, his claims that their relationship had to end immediately due to business complications and personal problems he couldn't explain. Sophia was clearly devastated by the abrupt rejection, having invested considerable emotional energy in pursuing Marcus and believing their connection was genuine and promising. Elena allowed Sophia to exhaust herself with questions and theories about Marcus's sudden withdrawal before producing a single photograph that showed their gallery embrace. Sophia's reaction was immediate and dramatic, her face flushing with embarrassment and her hands trembling as she recognized the implications of Elena's evidence collection. Unlike Marcus's desperate denials and bargaining attempts, Sophia immediately broke down in tears, admitting her attraction to Marcus and apologizing for betraying Elena's trust. Her emotional response seemed genuine rather than manipulative, suggesting that guilt and shame had been weighing on her more heavily than Elena had realized. Elena's approach with Sophia was more therapeutic than confrontational, recognizing that her sister's behavior stemmed from long-standing family dynamics and personal insecurities rather than malicious intent. She explained how their parents' favoritism had created competition between them that had poisoned their relationship and led to destructive patterns of behavior. Sophia acknowledged that she'd always resented Elena's stability and success, feeling that her sister received respect and admiration that Sophia had to fight for through dramatic gestures and attention-seeking behavior. Marcus had represented both a prize to be won and a way to prove she could attract someone Elena valued, motivations that she now recognized as shallow and hurtful. The conversation evolved into a deeper discussion about their family relationships and individual struggles, with both sisters acknowledging how their parents' differential treatment had damaged their ability to support each other. Elena expressed willingness to rebuild their relationship on honest foundations, but emphasized that future interactions would require genuine respect and consideration. Sophia accepted responsibility for her choices and agreed to end all contact with Marcus, recognizing that their relationship had been built on deception and betrayal rather than genuine compatibility. She also committed to addressing her financial problems through legitimate means, rather than pursuing relationships for economic security or social advancement. Elena's approach with Sophia demonstrated the emotional intelligence and strategic thinking that had served her well throughout the crisis, showing strength through setting boundaries while offering forgiveness through underlying motivations. The confrontation ended with both sisters expressing hope for eventual reconciliation while acknowledging the work required to rebuild trust.
The aftermath of both confrontations unfolded exactly as Elena had predicted, with Marcus disappearing from their social circles and Sophia retreating to focus on her art and personal growth. Elena's friends noticed her improved mood and increased confidence, commenting on how much happier she seemed without Marcus's demanding presence in her life. Daniel's business thrived following the partnership dissolution, with clients expressing relief about working directly with him rather than navigating Marcus's unpredictable behavior and questionable practices. Several major accounts that had been considering terminating their relationships decided to continue under Daniel's sole management, validating his decision to separate from Marcus professionally. Elena and Daniel's relationship became public gradually, with colleagues and friends noting their obvious compatibility and mutual respect. Their transition from secret affair to open partnership was seamless, built on foundations of trust and shared values that had been tested through difficult circumstances and proven solid. The family dynamics shifted slowly but positively, with Elena's parents eventually recognizing that their favoritism towards Sophia had created problems for both daughters. Carmen and Roberto began making conscious efforts to treat their children more equally, acknowledging Elena's achievements while supporting Sophia's genuine artistic pursuits rather than her attention-seeking behaviors. Marcus's departure from their lives created space for healthier relationships and more authentic connections, with Elena discovering friends and interests that had been suppressed during her relationship with someone who demanded constant accommodation and validation. Her career flourished as she applied the strategic thinking and emotional intelligence developed during the crisis to professional challenges and opportunities. 6 months after the confrontations, Elena and Daniel announced their engagement at a small gathering of close friends and family members who had supported them throughout their journey. The celebration was intimate and genuine, reflecting their shared values and commitment to building a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. Sophia attended the engagement party, having spent months in therapy addressing her personal issues and rebuilding her relationship with Elena through careful steps and consistent effort. Her presence represented genuine progress in their sisterly bond, though both women understood that continued healing would require ongoing work and patience. Elena's transformation from quiet, accommodating daughter to confident, strategic woman was complete but not dramatic, representing natural growth rather than artificial change. The crisis had revealed strengths and capabilities that had always existed but hadn't been necessary or encouraged in her previous circumstances. The birthday party kiss that had initiated the entire sequence of events became a symbol of unexpected opportunity rather than devastating betrayal, representing the moment when Elena's real life had finally begun. Marcus and Sophia's deception had freed her from relationships that were holding her back, clearing the path for genuine happiness and authentic success. Daniel proposed to Elena at the same restaurant where she'd confronted Marcus, choosing the location deliberately to transform a place of painful confrontation into a site of joyful commitment. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them, representing their shared understanding that challenges overcome together create stronger foundations than obstacles avoided. Their wedding took place 18 months after Elena's birthday party, with a guest list that included only people who had supported their relationship and respected their journey. Marcus was conspicuously absent, having relocated to another city where his professional reputation remained intact and his personal history unknown. Sophia served as Elena's maid of honor, their relationship having evolved into something healthier and more genuine than it had ever been during their childhood. The sisters had learned to appreciate each other's strengths without competing for attention or validation, creating space for both artistic creativity and practical success within their family dynamic. Elena's wedding speech thanked her guests for their support while acknowledging the difficult journey that had brought her and Daniel together, expressing gratitude for challenges that had revealed true character in both themselves and the people around them. The celebration was joyful and authentic, reflecting values and relationships that had been tested and proven strong. The final photograph in Elena's wedding album showed her and Daniel dancing together, their faces glowing with happiness and their future stretching ahead with promise and possibility. The image captured everything the birthday party photographs had not: genuine love and respect between equals who had chosen each other freely and honestly. Elena kept the evidence of Marcus and Sophia's betrayal locked away in her home safe, not as trophies of victory, but as reminders of lessons learned about character, patience, and the power of strategic thinking when applied with wisdom and restraint. The documents had served their purpose and would remain private unless circumstances required their revelation.
Years later, Elena would reflect on the crisis as a turning point that had revealed her true strength and capabilities while clearing the path for authentic relationships and genuine success. The quiet daughter had found her voice, not through dramatic confrontation, but through patient observation, careful planning, and strategic action that served justice while preserving dignity. The birthday party kiss had seemed like an ending, but had actually been a beginning, the moment when Elena's real story had finally started. Marcus and Sophia had thought they were writing a romance, but they had actually authored Elena's liberation, freeing her to become the person she was meant to be with the partner who truly deserved her love and respect. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.